Morning all. Just want to apologise for yesterday's lessons where I made many mistakes, including calling Donald Trump Boris Johnson, not being able to pronounce any Spanish words, not saying the correct Spanish words, and not being able to read a story. Hopefully today will be much better. Now, for our English lesson today, we're going to carry on looking at Mary Anning, and we're going to be looking at writing a biography. Now, one of the key parts of writing any text is making your sentences interesting. The way we're going to do that is we're going to use something at the beginning of our sentences called fronted adverbials. So, a fronted adverbial goes at the beginning of a sentence, hence why it's a fronted adverbial. It describes the verb in the sentence, i.e. what comes after it, and it mainly describes where, when, and how something happens. So, in very simple terms, a fronted adverbial goes at the beginning of a sentence and gives us some information about what is written after it. So if you have a look at this one here, earlier that day, comma, he walked to the shops. So the main part of this sentence, the main thing that's happening is he walked to the shops. The fronted adverbial tells us a bit more information about what's happening. So it says earlier that day, that's telling me when he walked to the shops. So it's giving us extra information. It would normally tell us when, where or how, in this case when. The part of the sentence after the comma happens. And a fronted adverbial must always have a comma after it to separate this part of the sentence from this part of the sentence. For those of you that may be looking at this and thinking about clauses, you may know that this is a main clause. He walked to the shops because it makes sense on its own. Earlier that day is a subordinate clause because it doesn't make sense on its own. So a fronted adverbial is always a subordinate clause. As soon as he could, Tom jumped off the train. And a lovely picture to go with it. That's telling us when it happened or how it happened. Last week I went to the dentist. Again, when it happened. In the winter, some animals hibernate. When? Outside my house, I found a pizza. What is that telling us? Is it telling us when, where, or how? You're right, hopefully. It is where. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to give you a list of fronted adverbials. We have gently, before I go to bed, at last, suddenly, at the park, and every playtime. And what I'd like you to do is to match each of these to the end of the sentence, the main clause, that you think goes with it. I think that's all of them. So, let me just double check. Yes, it is. Right, so you've got here your fronted adverbials, and you've got your main clauses. What I'd like you to do is pause the video and have a go at writing your fronted adverbial with the main clause that you think goes with it. There may be more than one answer. Off you go. Okay, so let's have a look. We have got, now you may disagree, and that's absolutely fine as long as your sentence makes sense. Gently, she lifted the sleeping baby. Before I go to bed, I cleaned my teeth. At last, I reached the finish line. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. At the park, I lost my coat. Every playtime, I play football. And as you can see there, some of the fronted adverbials wouldn't make sense with some of the main clauses. So if, for example, we matched at the park, I clean my teeth, that's not a likely match. So when you're using a fronted adverbial, it's really important that you pick one that makes sense for the sentence you are writing. So here are some examples of fronted adverbials, and you may be able to use them today in your main task. Every week, during playtime, once a year, before I go to bed, when I go home. So that is when. They are all about when something's happening. For our how fronted adverbials, we have without, running, carefully, suddenly, gently. Remember, each of these would have a comma after it. And then for where, lots of different locations. Beside my bed, on holidays, in the park, at home, outside my house, etc. All with a comma. Okay, a quick challenge for you. I'm going to give you the beginning of a sentence, i.e. the fronted adverbial, and I want you to finish it in the most interesting way you can. In the middle of the night, comma. Pause the video, off you go. Okay, let's see what you came up with then. Hopefully, if you wouldn't mind actually, make sure when you submit your work to Seesaw that I can see this sentence. So I'd really be interested to see what you decided to put. So today, we're going to be looking at how fronted adverbials are going to help us when we're writing a biography. And we use that because we can link sentences together in chronological order. Now remember, a biography is of someone's life. So we would tell it as their life happened, not they were 3 and at the age of 3 this happened, then at 45 this happened, then at 11 this happened. We keep it in order of when it happened. And this will help us when we're writing our biography. So this is a timeline of someone's life. So born 22nd November 1995, attended nursery age 3, began primary school in 2000, went to Barclay Secondary School, someone from Stevenage, got their first part-time job at the age of 16, finished 6th form, began teaching karate, started university, got a black belt in karate, won university awards, and then started working at Giles Junior School. Yes, it's me. So, the timeline of my life is very simple key events, and it's only the bits that are the really important parts of your life. And it's the same when you're writing your biography about Mary Anning. We're not interested in what she had for dinner on Tuesday night every week. We don't really care, okay? We're only interested in the really key events. So yesterday when you were reading the story, or I was making mistakes and reading it to you, you will have heard some of the key events, and hopefully those were the ones you wrote down for your task yesterday. So for here, there are lots of things I could have put about my life, but I've really cut it down to the important bits. So how are fronted adverbials going to help me? Well, if I was writing a biography or an autobiography about me, I couldn't write it like this. It'd be very boring. Began primary school in 2000. I need to think about what I can put at the beginning of the sentences to make them more interesting and make it flow better. So instead of started primary school in 2000, I could put at the age of 5, I began primary school in 2000. Give me that extra bit of detail. Instead of got a black belt in karate, I could put after many years of hard work, I achieved my black belt in karate. I've used a when here to help me, and I've used a how here to help me. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is you're going to pause the video and write down 5 key events from your life so far. It might be when you were born, it might be when you started school. Obviously most of you will have been to 2 schools, the infant school and the junior school. It might be if you had a sibling that was born. It might be any significant achievements outside of school, any hobbies you do, etc. It might be if you started any clubs, okay? Any key events. I'd like you to just write down 5 in note form. So not full sentences, just bullet point, 5 key events. Pause the video and do that now. Okay, so you've got your 5 key events. And what you're now going to do is you're going to think about adding a fronted adverbial to it to make it flow better and give me more information. So what I'd like you to do now is take those 5 key events and write them again with a fronted adverbial at the beginning. So like I did with mine, you take the basic information, you're going to add a fronted adverbial that either tells me when, where, or how, with a comma, and then you put your basic point in afterwards. Okay? Lovely. Not too many mistakes in that video. Hope you're all well. Speak to you soon. Bye.